Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an all-new reaction and review. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be checking out a movie from 2013, and that movie is Dredd. I am very, very excited about this because I've heard about the 97 movie of Dredd and how bad it was. So I decided not to waste my time with that movie because it's sort of like, basically it's just not even worth talking about. The 2013 movie, however, is something I'm very interested in because it reflects largely of the style of the comics. And since I've only just been starting to read Judge Dredd over the last few weeks, I must say, if the movie is anything like the books, I am going to... And I love the fact that the font for the movie I've got up here is pulled directly they're using Agency FB. That is amazing. That's my go-to font when I'm trying to put stuff together. I like that a lot. So, for those who are a little bit unfamiliar with the Judge Dredd universe, the Dredds, the judges as they're called, they are the judge, jury, and executioner of Mega City, in which they hunt down criminals, terrorists, utilizing ultra-violence, because a lot of their criminals bordering on terrorists have absolutely no remorse. It's basically... I don't know whether or not I would compare it to Blade Runner. I haven't even seen Blade Runner. But the Judge Dredd universe is... From what I've read in the comics, and the comics go as far back as the 1970s, and I've even got the first, an issue, of the very first issues of Dredd. And it's also be worth noting that the Judge Dredd comics were made by the British comic publication 2000 AD. And for those who have never heard of 2000 AD, they make some awesome comics, and many of them have featured writers like the legendary Alan Moore. And the two ones I've got from 2000 AD include all issues of The Ballad of Halo Jones, which was written by Alan Moore, and I don't quite remember if Moore ever wrote anything for Judge Dredd, but I hopefully they'll pick up on his influences, because Dredd has a lot of opportunities, and especially for a film, it should just explode with life and violence. Now, there's only one more thing I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about before we begin. It's that, among other things, Judge Dredd, it even has an audiobook, which is entitled Judge Dredd Year 1 Omnibus. Narrated by Jordan Harold, and I think it's written by Al Irving, Matt Smith, and Michael Carroll. You can see right there. And if it's anything like this audiobook, I'm only about a fifth of my way through it, then it's got me very, very excited because, well, in the book they have Judge Dredd with a very deep, gravelly voice. Think Christian Bale's Batman, but even more so. It sounds, and the dystopian outlook of Mega City that they describe in the book here, it's gotten me very, very interested, because by and large, to give this movie an 18 certificate, it makes me sort of wonder exactly how violent this is going to get, because they make some very... there's a lot of violence they describe in both the comics and as well as in the audiobook. And this is not even pointing out whether or not Dredd in this movie has a lore master. I mean, really he should. It's kind of a little bit a part of him, such as his lawgiver, I think it's called, his giant gun, which he uses to just execute people on sight. But even if it doesn't, then I'm very interested to find... Also, another interesting thing is that apparently this movie kind of doesn't really get talked about all that much, which strikes me as very interesting, because kind of like the 2014 RoboCop remake, I heard that was also a far more violent than the originals, and I might want to check that out just in case as well. But in the meantime, we've got the film of Dredd to look forward to, so it's time to kick back, relax, and check out Dredd. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Dredd. Let me shut that off. Wow, okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was... I think for exactly what they gave us, I'm very, very sold. Probably because it was just about as violent, it was just about as bleak. I don't really want to say it's like bleak, but it's very... like the most of the... Okay, let's start at the beginning. First of all, the story. The story follows Judge Dredd taking new recruit Judge Anderson on her first day of the force. Judge Anderson is a mutant, which somehow she thinks that's a good idea to not wear a helmet when going out to a city block called Peace Trees. However, just to hammer it in... Well, I don't want to say hammer it in, but her mutant power, I suppose, is being able to read minds, which comes in great use in this movie, because what happens is that these two go out to Peace Trees following 3 homicides from guys who were skinned and then thrown over a balcony nearly 175 floors in the air. And so what happens is that these 3 guys were all part of a group called the Ma Clan, run by by the movie's villain Ma. And within a matter of minutes after entering the building and devising who might have been behind all this, Ma, through the aid of some savvy tech, well, from this horrified kid called Mole, at least he had Mole carved into his forehead, so they didn't technically give him a name anyway, so I'm just going to go with Mole. He's ordered to... Well, he's basically override the system, and Peace Trees goes under complete lockdown. And then Ma sends the message that she wants both of those judges dead. What happens next, basically, is what you might expect. Basically, for the rest of the movie, is Dredd and Anderson basically going to war to get to the very top of this building. It's very similar in some ways to another film I was wanted to check out called The Raid, which is basically a bunch of guys raiding a block of flats, I believe. I've never seen it myself, but it had all the hallmarks for perhaps a great action film. And Dredd is definitely one of those, because the entire movie is basically from that point onwards, at sort of like the 15-minute mark, it's wall-to-wall chaos, as Dredd and Anderson literally have to fight and slug through what seems like millions of cartel members, all armed to the teeth with machine guns. And technically what does happen is that before the lockdown happens, Anderson and Dredd, they raid a shelter used for narcotics, and they take in this guy who wears yellow and has a chain around him, and he's their number 1 prime suspect involving with the Ma clan, because they'll be able to interrogate him. And Anderson is sort of trying to go into his mind, and this junkie keeps coming up with how do I fuck this girl over? How do I make her feel terrified? Because now that they're under lockdown, they're going to be hunted down, basically. And at least half of the movie is just them dragging this guy all the way up these floors just to find Ma. But oh my god, it's... I love Dredd, played by Carl Urban. Again, does the best thing you could possibly do in this role. He never really gets angry in this movie. Carl just keeping exactly to what a judge should be able to do is keep calm at literally all instances and demand that they obey the law. It's literally what you would find. It's what I found out very early on in the comics, is that it's a judge's duty to maintain literally all emotions under complete disciplinary control. And then, well, they find their way out. There's a lot of scenes in where people are just shot dead, set on fire, partially gassed due to Dredd going through different arms to fire at these guys. It's an absolute bloodbath of it's wall to wall carnage is what I'm trying to say, culminating in this great scene where they get sort of like near close to the top, and Ma has just immobilized at least like 5 juggernauts, just basically completely plaster an entire wall full of bullets, nearly killing Dredd and Anderson in the process. She is absolutely merciless, Ma, and very nearly gets Dredd and Anderson killed. And Ma, realizing that it's going to have to take a lot more, is that she actually rings for, she calls up judges to come in and take them out, because these ones are being bribed specifically by Ma to do this. Which is kind of ironic in a way, because they what happens is that they get blasted whilst they're under attack. Anderson and Dredd, they fall into this mini little skate ramp outside. So they actually call for backup, and they're not being allowed in because, well, Ma is basically holding Mole by, threatening to slice open his gut in front of everyone. So anyway, these other 4 judges, the ones who are being bribed, they immediately come up and they begin to begin basically on the hunt to, just completely disembowel both Dredd and Anderson, culminating in the junkie kidnapping Anderson and taking her captive to the top floor. Only Anderson, in a pretty cool little sequence, they start playing mind games off each other, forcing the junkie to sort of like wet himself in the middle of the room, and Anderson slaughters her. Dredd basically manages to take out 3 of these corrupted judges almost with no difficulty whatsoever, including a massive karate chop that manages to sort of like crush this guy's neck. It's quite strange as well, because the music doesn't there isn't really any sound effect to the crunch, but you could see the giant dent and how this judge just slowly falls to the ground. It's very, very, it's a sight to behold. Anderson basically makes away, kills a bunch of other guys. The rest of the judges fall when Dredd gets to this narcotics lab. Oh, actually, the thing about the narcotics, they're producing a drug called slow-mo, which is basically... Oh, God, what's... Like one of those, asthma tubes, but these are look as if filled with coke, and you inhale them, and the cinematography, they turn up the exposure, the offset, the gamma correlation, and slow everything down, and it's really pretty to look at. It actually gives it makes everything seem very colourful, because the walls for the most part in this movie are entirely leprous, probably because of the contact of people in Peachtree's tower. And this is even including a scene very early on in the movie where Ma is in a bath, or what looks like she's bathing in milk, and she's taking obviously slow-mo, and there's a scene where she just raises her hand, and the water shines, and she looks completely out of her mind. Just if anything, it looks like the after effects of spice more than anything. So, following to basically Anderson and Anderson letting Mole go, because part of what Ma did is that she stuck her thumbs into Mole's eyes and replaced them with cybernetics, so that that this kid would be able to hack into Peachtree's. Judge says to Anderson that this is a direct violation of duties, and she's more or less failed her assessment. Anderson, to her credit, comes back and says, no, I'm still a judge. I'm ordered to, give a judgment, and he was innocent. Basically putting Judge in his place, which is a very... she's not wrong sort of moment. So anyway, the climax to this was... I'm going to say it's a climax because that's the only real thing that's kind of a little bit missing in this movie, is that the climax is kind of not really there. Dredd and Anderson get to Mars' top floor. Mars sort of like rigs a bomb so that the top 50 floors would explode if Mars was to die. And I don't particularly think that I remember them ever saying that they defused the bombs or not when they were releasing Mole, but it probably must have done because, well, an important note to say about this movie is that threatening to kill the life of a judge is an instant death sentence. Well, death sentence, instant execution, you might say. Dredd administers slow-mo to Ma and then shoves her out of a window, culminating in this fantastic 1 minute shot where the glass shatters, smoke pours from Ma's mouth. She's in all sorts of poses, and then when she hits the floor, her face kind of like rips apart. And it was a the choreography in this movie, like in any good action film, is fantastic. There's no shaky cam. Everything is, it really is kind of like a Hollywood movie where the production is absolutely superb because it shows you absolutely everything you need and wanted to see. That's the hallmarks right there of a great action film. Because especially since like the 2010s and that, they were like obsessing over shaky cam and how it didn't quite look real, and Dredd, it looks very realistic. Probably because you could straight up believe that Dredd is as vicious and as law-abiding as they come. And also that he doesn't take his helmet off. That's just straight up how it should be, and how it always should be. So finally, all hell is over. Peace is reopened again. And Anderson, as it turns out, has passed, even though she walks away from the situation, minus her badge, I suppose. And then basically Dredd saying, you know what, you passed, and then he rides away on his, his lawmaster. And that's basically really the movie. So the movie isn't particularly very big on story because it sort of like has the premise set on very early in the film, and it's basically up to that. Which I must admit, it's a very different sort of take. They didn't really... It's not really a story about Dredd's, upbringing or how he even got through the academy, or even if he just buzzed up a few things, in Mega City 1. It's a story, basically, of putting Dredd through hell, which I thought was a very bold choice to do, because what sort of story could you really do with Dredd that would make him into, something you would want to see on the big screen? I mean, I haven't even seen Judge Dredd, which came out in 95. I don't know if I said 97 before. It was 95 after some research. And I'm curious as to just find out exactly... I think there was something about, like, Dredd's brother in the 95 film where he betrayed the law and formed his own gang or something like that. I couldn't remember. I couldn't tell you what it was. But what's important is that they made it work. And curiously enough, despite my own impressions, the judges are not completely OP. They've got a lot of opposition, meaning that they're not bulletproof, and they are actually a little bit easier to kill than you might think. Possibly because every single person almost completely owns, I don't want to say owns a gun, they own assault rifles, they own AKs, they own just about every gun of every size. I know the only people that actually have like hand pistols are these two kids who just kind of thought they were going to be big to kill two judges. it's kind of a little bit funny. Just they're so out of their league that Judge is just straight up saying that, you know what, either you get put in juvie cubes or I will slaughter both of you. He's not even that, remorseful at the idea of, you know what, you still threaten a Judge's life. That's an instant death sentence, which that's really kind of like that still says a lot about Dredd. And I think realistically, that's kind of the most I kind of like really want to say about this movie. It's a very kind of straight to the point action film, which I gotta say, you know what, for a 90-minute film is sort of how you kind of want it to be. You've got to establish some things very, very early on, and you've got to roll with it. I mean, basically, any amount of backstory we needed to know is solved in the first 20 minutes. Dredd is a judge. He's violent. He's pretty much unremorseful because he's defending the city. Anderson is new. She is a mutant. They believe she wouldn't make it because, you know what, she failed on one or two questions, and a fail is still a fail in the eyes of Dredd. Anderson is taken on anyway. They learn about the very, very high percentage that Anderson won't make through her first day, and they get locked in peace trees. And it's their journey to fight their way to the top to take Ma under custody. Although, as far as, this movie's concerned, custody basically means execute her with violent intentions. Which I suppose Dredd did in the end. So, anyway, also, like I was saying, the cinematography is wonderful. Not only with the shots where you see people on slow-mo, but anytime there's a fight that breaks out in a very narrow corridor, like I said, all the walls are basically entirely leprous. And it's a very, very believable cast. Ma is subsequently, you wouldn't necessarily think of her as being the leader of this, basically an entire drug ring filled with basically a small army of artillery weaponry at their disposal. Ma is subsequently not a threat, but also is the most sinister person in this entire film, even more than Dredd, because she fought her way literally from being a prostitute to taking over an entire drug ring by herself. That says, I think, just about everything it needed to be said. And so this is the joy of being back in watching action films for what feels like years. It's because sometimes you just want to see shit blow up. And this is exactly that case. I just want to see shit be blown up. And it's got me even more interested just to find out exactly how much of Judge... I wonder how many more, books in that I can get of Judge Dredd. That's because I know you can actually get copies of 2000 AD in corner shops and that, but in search, most of these are books. There actually is a lot of audiobooks. America, The Pit, Yeah, Free, Big Day Out. Oh my god, there's a lot. Judge Anderson, yeah, one. Okay, that might be good. An entire series dedicated to Anderson. Possibly as her escaping from, basically going into the world on her own and seeing what she can do. That's a really good idea. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for my reaction and review to Dredd. I hope all of you guys have enjoyed this video as much as I have, and I will see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye for now.